Good evening. How are you, everyone? I'm on a little bit late, so had a busy day today, but wanted to tell you about what's going on in the UK. And first of all, to highlight that, as anticipated, which I was mentioning last week and at the weekend, the government did go ahead and bring in a new sort of visa scheme to help solve the problem of like driver shortage and farm workers, poultry workers, shortage of staff there. And they're now going to issue 10,000 visas. That's 5,000 for drivers and 5,000 for poultry workers. But will it solve the problem of food and fuel shortages? Well, a lot of experts are saying no, it won't. And I want to explain more about that now. Just in case you don't know me, my name is Charles Kelly. This podcast is called Money Tips Daily. I talk about money and all things money and business news, that sort of thing. I'm on most days of the week, not usually on a Sunday. So this scheme though, okay, it's a temporary visa. That's the first problem with this scheme. It's a temporary visa. Now, in the case of lorry drivers, 5,000 lorry drivers, but I don't think it's going to be enough to fix the full fuel and food supply chain. This is the getting the fuel and food to the shops and the petrol stations. And also, because it's a temporary scheme, a 3-month scheme up till Christmas, who's going to come here? It's not going to attract drivers, is it? I mean, on the news this evening, they're already interviewing drivers in Europe. And he said, well, why would I come to the UK for 3 months? Which is logical. If they're already in a job, then why would they bother, coming to the UK, all the upheaval, just for 3 months? Then you've got the trucking companies, you've got to find them accommodation. They've got to deal with all the paperwork and that sort of thing. So I think this scheme is too little too late. I'm not suggesting that they issue hundreds of thousands of visas, because the government at the end of the day wanted to reduce immigration after Brexit, and to completely switch that around and start bringing in hundreds of thousands of workers from the EU would sort of defeat the object from that. It would be hugely embarrassing for them. I mean, this is enough of a U-turn for them. I don't think they're going to do much more than this. So they've announced this kind of rushed plan, really, to bring in 5,000 visas for HGV drivers. These are heavy goods vehicle drivers. I think the license is called a Class 1. So if you've got a car license, you can drive vans and that sort of thing, but you can't drive these huge trucks. And then there's different categories of license depending on the size of the truck. But, when you've got these big, huge juggernauts, that thunder around our roads all day, they require a special license, special training. This training can cost, between £5,000 and £7,000. It can take months to do. For obvious reasons. You don't want just any old Tom, Dick and Harry jumping in a big lorry and driving at 70 miles down, an hour down the motorway. They're pretty dangerous. They're like lethal weapons, these things. So that's one thing. Then there's 5,500, I believe, poultry workers rather. These are working on the chicken farms and the turkey farms. This is to save Christmas, because what can we do without our turkeys this Christmas? It's a disaster, isn't it? I mean, all the people in the world who are starving and in war-torn conditions. Look at what's going on in Afghanistan, for instance. Missing out on a turkey this Christmas is hardly going to be the end of the world, is it? But this scheme is only going to run till Christmas, so they're looking at saving Christmas and getting fuel out there to people. But someone called Mike Digioia, head of European Road Haulers Association, they represent 200,000 trucking companies across the continent. That's a lot of trucking companies. He said in the Observer that the weekend, much more would be needed than a temporary relaxation of the immigration rules. There's a driver shortage across Europe, he said. So I'm not sure how many would want to even go to the UK, especially for a temporary visa. So look, there are shortages of 400,000 truck drivers in the EU, and this includes countries like Germany, Lithuania, where they have a massive truck driving industry. So attracting them here for 3 months is going to be a real challenge for any company. Maybe they're going to have to give them more money. I don't know, but if you're a truck driver now in the EU, it's unlikely you're going to be unemployed if there's this big shortage. So what will happen with that scheme remains to be seen. Also, we haven't really had the details as to how this will work. Do the companies have to register as sponsors? How long does that take? I remember the Home Office taking quite a while to register a company as a sponsor. Do they have to go and visit each company? Are they going to be watching out for fraudulent visas, for instance? How they're going to monitor this scheme when it's rushed through for Christmas? Because if you issue sponsorship to any old company, it could be a shell company. How do they monitor that? How do they know they're not just going to bring in fraudulent, issue fraudulent visas to workers and bring people in the country as part of sort of immigration fraud? So that has to be looked at. So I don't think it's going to resolve the estimated UK shortage of around 100,000 drivers. And as I said, setting up the scheme could take quite some time as well. So there you go. I would have thought a more obvious scheme would be to get the army in, to get the armed forces in to just start driving trucks. I mean, they've got people there already deployed, but ministers have kind of ruled that out. They said they won't do it. So look, there are also 1 million people unemployed in the UK. So a lot of people will get the unemployed to drive, but this is a specialist area. Not everyone can be licensed to drive these trucks. So perhaps more funding is needed to train more drivers, because at the moment the process is quite long and laborious. There's a lot of red tape involved because people who've got their license already have to sit further courses then, which many in the industry say are just a complete waste of time and a nonsense. So if they started reducing the red tape that's been introduced in the last year or two, I think that could speed up the process of getting more drivers on board and out there actually working rather than sitting at home. There are also 5 million people here on universal credit. This is a kind of a benefit that's paid. Sometimes it can be to top up existing work, but 5 million people is a lot. That would include things like sickness benefit as well. But there are also 600,000 people still on the job retention scheme, which furlough scheme it's called. Hopefully that will end in a few days' time. But employers are paid by the taxpayer to have staff sitting at home watching Netflix long after the economy has opened up here. There's not many businesses that are completely closed. So a lot of people are saying that, well, what are the government doing? We need to get more done and get it done fast. The ministers are coming on saying to people, don't panic buy. But I don't think people are panic buying. Now, there's a road near me which runs into the high street, and the traffic has been blocked up there all weekend. And I thought, is it roadworks? But when I walked down further and asked somebody, no, it's because people are queuing into a petrol station, which is in a single lane road. So you've got one lane going that way, one lane going the other way. So people are queuing, people can't get round, and they're queuing from both sides. So it's blocked up the whole of the town from both sides for people queuing for petrol. Now, I don't believe people are going to sit there and queue for maybe 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours in some cases, I heard on the news, just to fill up a jerry can or top up their car by £5 worth of petrol. Most of these people queuing need the petrol, they need the fuel. And then there's this the rather amusing story. It's ironic really that the guy driving the tanker that comes to deliver the fuel can't get fuel himself. He has to go and queue up like everybody else to get fuel. So I don't understand that, because he's got a tank full of fuel on the back, but he can't use that to put anything in his own petrol tank. But that's the rule. Now, I remember in the old days that depots and police stations and bus companies used to have their own supply of fuel. They would have maybe an underground tank, and they'd have one of those petrol pumps there. So I don't know what happened to those. Maybe they're not used anymore. But we hear of the emergency services not being able to get fuel. But I thought depots should be really self-sufficient with their own fuel. And I'm going back a few years, but you see this you used to see this in police stations and that sort of. They'd have their own pump there. But they seem to have done away with all that now. I don't know why. But, we did have a fuel shortage due to a driver strike over 20 years ago, and they did bring in the army then, and that seemed to settle things down and get things sorted out. But I think for ministers just to say, well, there isn't a problem, there's plenty of fuel, but that doesn't help anybody when they're queuing up outside a station for 2 hours to know that, oh, there is fuel, we just can't get them delivered. And why should... stop panic buying. I think the panic buying is over now. People are just buying because they're running out of fuel. They need to get to work. And NHS workers need to get to work. policemen need to get all these things, and even the guy who drives the tanker can't get fuel. So this is something's got to be done more than just telling people not to panic buy. I think personally, I'd like to see the army brought in to drive these trucks immediately, because any other solution is weeks away. And I've got someone making a comment here. Yeah, there's the media is the problem, but I keep going on about it. Yeah, I think that's true. BP kind of started it with mentioning that there might be problems, and that's all blown up now. So every time you switch the TV on, the media are, as Des says, blowing it up out of all proportion. I agree with that. But I think now it's, people I'm speaking to are running out of petrol, or they can't go to work. Cab drivers, different types of drivers, van drivers, delivery drivers, they can't get out. Perhaps now people will have to actually walk to a shop to buy something. Oh my God, you have to go walk to a supermarket to get your shopping, or you might have to walk to a shop to buy something instead of getting it on Amazon. But as I was saying last week, this seems to be a convenient excuse for companies like Amazon and FedEx to bring in driverless vehicles or drone deliveries, and then start getting rid of drivers altogether. In Texas, the FedEx are already trialing a driverless truck, one of these huge big juggernaut trucks, woo-woo, and they're trialing them without drivers, but they've got a backup driver in the truck during the trial to drive 300 miles to deliver parcels to other depots. So that's coming, and it won't be long before that's here, because the technology is already here. They just need to roll it out and get it out there. But it would seem convenient that suddenly there's this big shortage of drivers everywhere, and I never heard of this. I mean, did anybody else hear about a shortage of drivers until about a week or so ago? And now at the same time, there's this in the wings. There's this saviour's come in. Oh, we can deliver your stuff by drone, or we can use driverless vehicles. We don't need all these things, these drivers causing trouble. Let's get rid of them. And you stay at home on universal credit or on universal basic income and watch Netflix, because we're building more studios now in the UK. We're building in Hertfordshire, 3 studios have been built to produce more TV, more fodder for the people to sit at home and watch TV. That maybe I'm going a bit far here. I don't know, but it does seem convenient that these things are happening around us as we're into this strike, because not this strike, but this shortage. So just watch out for that. I'm sure you'll hear more of these driverless vehicles, and it's just part of the AI technology that will eventually wipe out tens of millions of jobs. Now that might sound a bit negative, but I've looked into this. 3 million drivers in America alone, 3 million truck drivers. So that's a factor. If most of those go, that's millions of jobs gone already. And then you've got all the cab drivers. They're already testing out driverless cabs. Uber have got a scheme for driverless taxis in China. They're already using some of these driverless taxis and driverless buses. Now, I know we've got driverless trains on the underground here, but that's different when you're just going up and down the track. But for a bus or a cab to move through the traffic is quite a feat. But that technology is here. And another comment here from Des: how is it that the driver shortage appears to have only come up to light in the last couple of months? Well, I agree. I didn't hear about this. And in case you're blaming Brexit, I think Brexit is a factor, but I think a lot of people went home from Europe during the lockdown, not after Brexit. In fact, most of the Eastern Europeans I know have not gone home at all. They're still here. But yeah, people definitely did go. Landlords told me that they were losing tenants particularly in HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, where people decided, look, the shop I work for, the pub or the restaurant I work for is closed. I'm going to go back home to Europe and sit it out until, things change. So yeah, some did go back during that lockdown. And that's when I think the damage was done, the lockdown to businesses and everything else. Brexit, I don't think, made a huge difference, because 5 million people got residence during that run-up to Brexit. They made it very easy for Europeans to get residence, much easier than if you were, say, from India or the Philippines, where you had to pay a lot of money to become a resident. They made it so easy for Europeans to apply and get residency. So I think most of them who wanted it have got it. And during that time, they could have come here anyway and just stayed with limited paperwork. So I can't necessarily blame Brexit for everything. So there you go. That's my thoughts on what's happening at the moment. I hope things get better, but the way it's going at the moment, if the ministers are just saying, well, don't panic, don't panic buy, I don't think that's going to solve the problem, frankly. You've got to do a bit more than that. And if you're worried about key workers, then maybe let key workers jump ahead of the queue and get fuel. I think that's the answer. But then who's going to manage that? The guy sitting inside the petrol station, sometimes there's only one or two of them in there. He can't be running out in the road checking people's badges and stuff like that. This takes some management here, because the cars are literally queuing up down the road at the moment. And I've certainly sort of cancelled trips now. I'm thinking, right, I was going to go somewhere this coming weekend. I'm not going to go now, because what if I go there and then I run out of petrol on the way back or whatever? What if I use all my petrol and can't get any more after that? So I've got to think about essential journeys only, or using public transport where I can. So there you go. Now, have you ever thought about maybe making a bit of extra money from property? Now, a lot of people think you need money to buy property or to be in property. It was not really true, because you can get into property without necessarily having money yourself. There are lots of strategies, and that's going to be discussed in a free webinar Sunday the 3rd of October. It's a property networking webinar, so you can also link up with people. You can go there live, or you can listen to it on Zoom, and I'd say it's definitely worth doing. It's a free webinar, so I'm putting the link up here at the bottom. If you're interested in getting into property but not quite sure how, or just want to learn more from other people, learn from speakers, then do click on that link down there and join in. So thanks very much for everyone joining in, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Thanks to Des for your comments there, and also thanks to Ronnie. Great to see you all. Please click the like button and share this free content if you can. And if you're watching on YouTube, the same thing. Please subscribe, click like, share, whatever. So thanks for listening, and have a great evening.